Hey guys, Tony Long here of TL Audio Mixing and Mastering, coming to you with a quick tutorial. So I was just recently on the Waves Audiophiles group in Facebook, and somebody was asking a question. They actually said, like, noob question here or something like that. I think her name was Mava Indy, or his name was Mava Indy, and they were just asking about resonant frequencies, or well, just frequencies changing whenever you use a high pass or low pass frequency beyond whatever frequency you choose. So the short answer is yes, you are going to be changing the frequencies below or above whatever frequency you choose on your low pass or high pass filter. You're not going to chop off the frequencies exactly wherever you put it. There is going to be a slope. Now, the slope of a high pass filter or a low pass filter is essentially telling you how many dB you're going to be attenuating, which is just a fancy word for lowering the volume, starting from your frequency. So, like, for example, I'm going to pull up this EQ 7 by Pro Tools by Abbott. So I've got this high pass filter set at 300 hertz, right? And if I put it on at 300 hertz, which is, supposedly right here, there's this kind of like slope over here, right? And essentially what this is telling me is that for every octave, it's going to attenuate by 18 dB. Now, the idea of the octave, all right, I'm going to just use musical notes right now. So an A, right, on a piano is going to be 440 hertz, right, like middle A. Now, the next A up in the next octave is actually a doubling of that frequency. So the next frequency up would be 880 hertz. So you're going from 440 to 880. You're doubling the frequency, right? So when you're talking about per octave, 18 dB per octave, that means that starting from around 300 hertz, the next octave down from there is going to be 18 dB quieter. And then the next octave down from there is going to be another 18 dB quieter, and so forth into infinity. So you are not going to just completely chop off everything, boom, from wherever your starting point is. If you did, it's going to sound super weird because the instrument itself, whether it's a voice, acoustic guitar, whatever, it's got information that kind of fills up the entire spectrum. Obviously, some parts are going to be stronger than others, but it's still filling up the entire thing for the most part. So whenever you're taking away frequencies, you are going to be changing the sound of it. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, what I'm going to use, I'm going to show you a couple of examples, all right? So like the SSL channel on this acoustic guitar here, which I got from Contact from their Strummed Acoustic, which sounds great. I'm going to use this PAS frequency analyzer by Waves, just so we can see what we're doing. Excuse me. So, and I'm going to, let's see, pull up this SSL EQ. Now I've got it, or I'm going to set it up to, say, 300 hertz, right? Just so we can really hear the difference. And we're going to see what's happening to the frequencies, all right, whenever we change this. So this is going to be at bypass. We're going to look at the frequency graph real quick. Here we go. So plenty of low-end information over here on this acoustic guitar. Like starting from like 62, going all the way down, right, to 0, basically. Excuse me. There's this hump over here, right, at 125, at 250, which is right there. This is 300 right there. This is about 300. So now if I bypass, all right, just bear in mind that frequency right there, right? Actually, so that's 300, right? That little bump right there. Now, if I bypass this, let's see what happens. One sec, let me fully bypass it. So this is 300 right there, right? So this is now the slope. This is what is essentially going down 18 dB per octave on this SSL, all right? Which, by the way, is standard. Like that's the default. It's 18 dB per octave on an SSL E channel. It goes all the way down. So you're not completely cutting everything off exactly at 300, but what you're doing is you you are just lowering the volume at 18 dB per octave all the way down, and it goes even all the way down to like about maybe 20 hertz, all the way down to there. So just keep that in mind, when you are using a high pass or low pass filter. Some of them are going to be a little bit cleaner than others, right? This is going all the way down to here. If I use the EQ7, all right, which is right here, this is going to be a little bit cleaner. So let me just default. So just try to memorize this right here, this kind of slope. So much cleaner, just less going on down here. Definitely attenuated a lot more. Still got the slope. It seems a little bit smoother. Bear in mind again that the SSL is based off of analog gear, so it is going to add a little bit more harmonic coloration. All right, so this is just a super clean EQ. And then if we go with something like the Ozone 7 EQ, which is super cool, it goes all the way up to 48 dB per octave, which is kind of insane. But let's just hear what it sounds like from jumping from 12 dB to 48 dB. All right, let me just default this again. Here we go. It's a little bit smoother, like kind of like a smoother transition all the way down than the EQ7. The EQ7 kind of like chopped it a little bit down here. There's a little bit of like a drastic kind of fall, but this is just kind of more of like a smoother kind of sound, which is really, really nice. Now, if we decided to go with the 48 dB, which maybe if you're listening is probably closer to what you had in mind, this is what it's going to sound like. Let's default this. So it's stopping at about 100 hertz, all right? It's a really steep slope. It's very steep. Now, the steeper that this slope gets, it starts to sound more unnatural because again, you're making like a very kind of sharp surgical kind of cut there, right? Or filter. So yeah, it's gonna sound weird. It's not gonna sound great. If I push it down though, it might sound all right. If I go down to maybe 200, it might sound okay. I mean. But now you start to kind of get a little bit of that resonant frequency that you don't want. It sounds like a little hunk, all right? Like, listen real closely for it. It happens on the dun 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 dun. Like on that note in that area, you hear like a little like. Oh. Did you hear that? It sounds like warbly and kind of hunky. So when you start making really steep cuts like that, you start to introduce those kind of resonant frequencies. If I put this at 12 dB again, let's see if it's still there. It sounds a little bit more natural. It's still a little bit there, and that's something that we'd have to probably notch out a little bit. But it's not as apparent when the slope is a little bit smoother. All right, so that's just something to keep in mind. Now, I also had this this acoustic guitar over here. I'm not going to go through all of these, all right, but I am just going to use the Ozone just to show you what happens if you're using a low pass, all right? So let's just turn this guy off and turn the low pass on. Now, bear in mind that when you're using a low pass, you are getting rid of maybe the air, the articulation, just the things that define whatever instrument you've got. So don't go crazy with a low pass filter because it can really ruin the sound of your recording. So this is at 12 dB per octave, all right? And we're gonna go to 10 kilohertz. So again, 12 dB per octave, we're going the other way, right? So this means that the next octave up, which is 20 kilohertz, it is going to be 12 dB quieter at 20 kilohertz than it is at 10 kilohertz, which is actually right over here. But if you notice, it's starting to attenuate way over here at 4 kilohertz. It's already starting to cut off there, so just keep that in mind. kind of nuts, right? It just completely, it makes it sound like it's in another room. Now I took some pictures, just some snapshots of what, let's see. This is a snapshot of it at 24 dB per octave, just to show like the slope, and just to show that the frequencies do in fact change, right? So we're going to compare this to, let's see, we're going to compare this to, I guess this one here. Is that right? No, this is 24 dB still. Something different. All right, so this is 48 dB, all right? Now, if you look at the frequency graphs, right, you're going to notice that there are definitely differences, all right? In other words, all right, so this is like at 24 dB per octave. This is at 48 dB per octave. It's the exact same guitar, all right? But if you notice, when I start to change the slope, it's not just changing the slope up here, but it's also changing the rest of the sound of the guitar. So at 24 dB, like there's still like this little hump over here, little dips and valleys, all right? But you see this little dip over here? It's not over here. And this is me just using a low pass all the way at 10K, and it's affecting some frequencies all the way down at around 200. All right, this dip is still there. That dip is still there. This is a little bit rounder. This is a little bit flatter. So I'm just like showing you graphically that, yeah, like you are actually changing the sound depending on what kind of slope you use. So just keep that in mind, all right? All EQs are different. All, you know, slopes are going to sound a little bit different. They're going to change the sound, maybe sound better, maybe sound worse. Obviously experiment, all right? Just try different stuff and use your ears. Always use your ears. They're your most important tool. That's pretty much it. This is, again, Tony Long of TL Audio Mixing and Mastering. If you like the channel, if you like what I'm about, if you've learned something, or, I don't know, I've opened your eyes to something new, please subscribe. Subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, your mixer friends, musicians, DJs, whatever. We're all basically working on the exact same thing, trying to get the best possible sound. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Maeva, I hope this answered your question, all right? Take care, guys. Bye-bye.